Yo, what's up YouTube? We're going to be going over builds and runes for Fiora, checking out a few for preseason for Season 12. This is like my main rune page. This is the one that I like the most. I think it's more consistent. Obviously, Conqueror gives you the AD, which scales with Fiora's kit. You know, the more AD you have, the more vital damage you're going to do. So that's always a big deal, and that's why we build Mura mana in most of these as well, you'll see. Triumph really helps, especially in this meta. Top laners running a lot of Ignite, especially, and then you got champions like Darius and stuff, Lilia with bleeds. Triumph helps a lot when you're trying to all-in, because there's really no way out once you're playing Fiora. When it comes to the Legend, I think Alacrity is the best. I can see an argument for Bloodline and Tenacity, but when you're playing Fiora, I feel like the Tenacity rune is kind of useless, just because you have your parry, and you're one of the most mobile champs in the game, so you should be able to dodge everything that you need to, or parry it. I think you should go into fights 1v2s, 1v3s, 2v2s, whatever it may be, and know what ability you need to parry, or what you need to dodge, or what you need to do in the team fight to be useful. Bloodline is okay, but then again, you think about it, and it takes a very long time to stack. Once again, top laners, a lot of them are running Ignite, this as well. And then Last Stand, obviously, for baiting people with your parry and so on and so forth. I like the Resolve secondary with Revitalize and Bone Plating. I also think that you can go unflinching sometimes. I think that unflinching is actually pretty solid if you're doing if you're going into a lot of slow resist, a lot of CC. This will save your life a lot, actually. It will. But also Revitalize for the late game. That's where you're going to get a lot of your heals from, right? And then shields from like supports and stuff like that. It scales with that as well. I think Bone Plating can kind of be traded in and out with Second Wind, but I prefer Bone Plating just because I play super aggressive and I'm going to go all in a lot. But I really think this is more interchangeable, like Bone Plating and Revitalize, or Bone Plating and Demolish, if you know you're going to be split pushing a lot. I always take double adaptive, and that's another reason why we take Alacrity, because it's a lot of damage, especially when you're stacking Conqueror. You can have 100 AD at level 1 if you fight somebody all the way through. And then obviously you're going to take MR or Armor. That's going to change based on whoever you're laning against. Alright, so for the runes that we just took, the Conqueror with the Resolve Tree, this is going to be the core build. And by core, that just means your first 3 items. And typically your core is always going to stay the same. Your core is your core, right? It's the main 3 items that you buy, and then your 5th and 6th can be situational. Your main 3 items not going to really switch off of those, unless you have to. Unless you have to get a QSS tax or something crazy like that. Merc Treads, heavy CC, mainly AD, Ninja Tabbies, and honestly, if you can get... if you are carrying the game, if you're going hard, snag CDR boots. So serious. CDR boots are actually OP, but you want to use them into a team that does not have a lot of CC, a lot of auto attack, or something like that. Something where it's like tanks, or some way that you're going to be able to navigate team fights without taking a lot of damage. CDR boots are actually really strong. So the core build will be... we would take Stridebreaker first. Now, here's a big thing, and this is going to be for every single rune page that I show you, so I'm just going to go ahead and talk about it now. This is your first power back, and it's an economy back, right? So when you're backing, a lot of people back for no reason. If you can't buy certain items and you're full health, you're just wasting time by backing, right? You want to have an econ back, and the perfect back for Fiora, which is really hard to do, but if you manage to hit it for your first back, it is... you should be able to steamroll the game. If you can hit 1500, you buy a whip, you buy a tier, and you're set. You buy a whip and you buy a tier. By the time you get to your Mura mana, it should be fully stacked, because you're going to do it second item for big AD, and you'll see why. It is the highest value AD item, and it scales with Fiora better than any other champion in the game. That is huge, huge damage. Huge damage that no other item can give you. And now, we're going to start building something that's going to help us out. So, I like to play aggressive, so I typically take, this is kind of back and forth, right? You take Ravenous if you're ahead, right? Ravenous if you're ahead. And then if you're kind of behind, go ahead and grab Sterix. If your team is absolutely garbage and you have to split, grab the Hullbreaker. but rarely. Rarely. That's like if you're just giving up. That's like you're giving up on your team completely, and you're gonna snag the whole breaker. You might not need to. But me personally, I typically always go with Ravenous. And this would be like your 3 items. Your 3-item power spike. This would be your core build. And this is where you're going to do a lot of damage. So. And then also keep in mind, the reason that you're going like Stride Breaker and like... You can build Gore Drinker. I prefer Stride Breaker because of the slow. It slows enemies for 40% for 3 seconds, which just allows you to hit the vitals easier. And also, I always think that whip items are better, but I'm going to show you a few variations you can use where you're not going to use the whip. I just think that it's really rare that you should, because you can hit vitals with it, which everyone should know. You can just hit vitals with your Stride Breaker. Kind of huge. But it also allows you to set up for like really fast 4 vitals. Actually, let's talk about, really quick, actually. Let's talk about situational items. Honestly, like my ideal build would really be like this into like an AD team, right? You can honestly get away with like not building it. Another thing that I really like to do, if they have mixed damage and you really want a lot of damage, I love this build. I love the Death Stance Maul build. It's all AD. It's huge damage, and it has resistances. So you have over 100 and you have 155 armor. So that's really good as well. But you can replace the Death Stance with you can replace them all with Sterix if they don't have a lot of MR. You can also build, and this is like a really tanky build that I think is a lot of fun actually, is you can take Sterix and you can get a Stone Plate as well, just for the resistances in team fights. I think that's super strong too. So you could take Sterix and then a Stone Plate. This is something I actually really like building, but it's rare that you get to this point in the game. All right, let's hop into a few other rune pages. Actually, all right, so we're going back to my main build here, or my main rune page, There is a secondary way to do this. If you feel like you're going to carry the game, or you're really, really comfortable in your lane, and you're like, okay, I'm going to fight this guy, I'm going to kill him a few times, like this is my game to snowball, go the sorcery route. So you can definitely do this as well. And this is more, so the Resolve secondary tree is more of a safe way to play Fiora in lane for sure. And then when you take on the sorcery, this is more of like, okay, I know I'm going to win this lane, and you're investing in the mid to late game. Now, I actually really like, this can be interchangeable. Now, this is actually a disagreement that I have with somebody who is a Grandmaster's Fiora one trick as well. Now, obviously, I'm Masters, he's Grandmasters, so maybe it's a little bit different. Maybe he's right, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that Transcendence is actually really good. I think on Champion Takedown Ruse, their remaining cooldowns of basic abilities like 20%, right? What I do is I like Transcendence and Gathering Storm, right? And then he likes Absolute Focus and Gathering Storm. Now, I've played the Absolute Focus, and it's actually pretty good. The Absolute Focus is actually pretty good, I'm not going to lie. But it's like while you're above 70% HP, you gain a bunch. And then when it gets in the late game, you're gaining 18 AD. So it is pretty solid, right? So either one of those, Absolute Focus, Transcendence, and Gathering Storm. But either way, you're taking Gathering Storm both times. It is, like I said, you're not very safe in lane. You don't have protection in lane. You have no bone plating. You have no extra heals, none of that stuff. You're just basically committing to full damage, and if you take this rune page, you're saying, I am going to carry this game. So you need to go into the game realizing that you're going to be weak in lane, and that you scale not to fight as much unless it's a real kill, because if you start getting behind with this rune page, you're not going to be able to bring it back. Let's talk about bad lanes. Let's talk about our Tom Kenches, our Akalis, our Warwicks, any lane where we just, our Poppies, any lane where we're just probably not going to win it, right? Any lane where it's really bad and we have no real chance. Even like Set sometimes, because Set with Ignite, that sucks. Let's talk about our bad lanes for a second, the lanes that we don't win. We're going to switch up the build. We're going to take Grasp, Demolish, Bone Plating, and then once again, this is the same thing as the first one. You can kind of trade these up. I take Bone Plating, but you could do either. And then Heavy CC, Unflinching. Revitalize is what I would take. So this would be like what I would build. but you can go unflinching if they've got a lot of CC for sure. And then there's two different ways to do this. But depending on how you do it, there's one way that's safe and that's going to be better, and then there's always a way with Fiora where you can try to carry with. So let's talk about the real way, or the safe way, right? The way that's going to be more beneficial is just to take boots and biscuit delivery. Now, if you're going to go this, you're not going to run double adaptive. You're going to run attack speed on here. Attack speed, adaptive, armor, or MR, depending on who you're laning against. But boots and biscuit delivery. And so a good rule of thumb, especially when you're taking like magical footwear, I challenge you to not die before you get your boots, because that's a small power spike. If you go into a game with a rune page like this, you're already committing to saying, I'm going to play the lane phase evenly. I don't want to win it. I don't want to lose it. I just want to come out of it even, because I'm playing this rune page on Fiora, which means I'm not comfortable in that lane. I challenge you, if you play this rune page into a lane that you don't like, is to not try to do anything crazy. If you got a freebie, then take it, obviously. So when we're taking Grasp and we're taking this rune page, we just want to stay alive in lane. We want to be able to farm. We want to stay healthy in lane. We don't want to die. As long as we don't die and we come out of lane, we're playing Fiora. It's a late game hyper carry. If we can get to the late game and stay even, we will win. We will win every 1v1 once the 30 minutes come around and we have our 3 items, 100%. So we're going to take this rune page and we're going to run this into a game as well. I'm going to show you the core build for this. Okay, so we're going to be looking at this from the point of view of the runes that we take if we're in an uncomfortable lane. So we're going to have, obviously, this is the Grasp, Demolish, Bone Plating, Revitalize, Magical Footwear, Biscuit Delivery. So for this one, the core build is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be the Divine Sunder. So you're going to take, if you're running Grasp, there's no point in running anything else besides Divine Sunder. It's just going to work better overall. So we're going to take Divine Sunder. And now, once again, like I said, this is the same thing. I can't buy boots because I have magical footwear. Once again, like we talked about before, steel plates into full AD, Merc treads into a lot of CC, and then if you're going off, take those CDR boots. Trust me. So we're not going to have boots for this, but once again, we're taking Mana Immune, and with this build, it's a little bit different. A nice power back with this build is going to be 1,100 gold instead of 1,500. Because we really want to take the Sheen and we want to take the tier. Now, if we're going to do like a cheater back and push 3 waves in and then back, and we won't lose anything when we come back, typically you're going to have 400 gold. So just grab the tier and start stacking it, because you want that 2-item power spike and you want it done when you hit 2 items. So we're looking for Sheen and we're looking for the tier for our first back. We're looking for 1,100 gold instead of 1,500. So obviously we're playing runes that we use when we're uncomfortable in lane against like tanks, like Tom Kench, Jax, Akali, those types of the lanes. Obviously, if we're using a rune page like that, we have to have a better power back that's going to fit that playstyle, because we're going to be playing a little bit slower. We're not really trying to get kills. We're not going to have as much gold. So we're looking for the Sheen and we're looking for the tier. Taking Divine Sunder first. So we take the Mirror Mana. So it's once again, it's just a massive spike. So when it comes to the third item with this rune page, you do have a choice for the core build. And like I said, the core builds are supposed to be pretty set in stone for what you want to build. But for this one, it's a little bit different, right? Because now, if you're having trouble with the wave clear and you really just need to push waves and get out, then take Titanic. But the thing is that Titanic scales off of how much HP you have. So if you're more focused on taking objectives, especially with this preseason where we have these bounty objectives, it might be more beneficial to actually take Sterix first and take the HP from that before we go into the Titanic. So with the Mirror Mana, we don't have to worry about wave clear that much, right? Because we can just spam abilities. We can spam abilities because we're never going to run out of mana. We have Mirror Mana. So we'll be fine. It's the same thing as like Essence Reaver at the beginning of Season 11, where you never run out of mana. So honestly, I think this is very interchangeable. You can go Titanic, you can go Sterix, But whichever one you go, you take the next one second. So with this build, because it is, you know, a play from behind build or an uncomfortable lane build, so on and so forth, you don't get that much variety with it, right? So we're going to have Sterix. This is it. This is your core. You just can pick which one you're going to build first. You can just pick which one you're going to build first. And then the last item should be a defensive item. We're still going to do a ton of damage. This is still a great build. It's just not as efficient, in my opinion, when it comes to damage. But it is going to allow you to team fight better. It's going to allow you to take on tanks. And once you're at this point, you're just going to do so much damage anyways. It doesn't matter, you know? So when it comes down to the last item, you can kind of do anything you want with it. A Randuin's, I don't know, the Stone Plate, a Spirit Visage, Death Stance even. If you're feeling it, take that Death Stance. And that's it for that. So we went through the main build, the Conqueror. We went through the uncomfortable lane with the Grasp. And now we're going to have a little fun and check out the PTA build, which I've tried a little bit. I think it's very situational. So we're taking the same runes, the Triumph, Alacrity, and Last Stand. Once again, this is something that you can switch up the sorcery with the Resolve, same way that we talked about earlier. But for the sake of this, we're going to do it like this, the way that I always build it. And we're just going to go over a few things that you can do, and we're going to have a little bit of fun with this. I'm going to show you guys a few builds that you can do, just overall that I've tried that have actually worked, and then a few that will go well with PTA as well. So let's see. All right, so we're on the PTA build now. As always, Mirror Mana, but I'm going to talk about. We're going to talk about for a second. So actually, let's just go through the PTA build, and then I'm just going to show you a bunch of meme builds, basically. So for the PTA build, what I like here is actually to it depends. It really depends, but I don't mind this at all. It just takes a while to get ahead or do a lot of damage. Once again, Mirror Mana second item, always Mirror Mana second item. At least if I'm like really try hard, and I'm always taking Mirror Mana second item. But we're actually going to take a Bork here. So, and then this is, so the PTA build is weird. So I'm actually going to kind of speed run through this and just talk about all the different builds that we've tried here on stream the last 2 months and everything that we've kind of played with. Now, for the PTA, what I like to do is Bork, and then either Stridebreaker or Triforce, one of the two. We're just going to take Triforce or Stridebreaker here instead of Tri. And then we're going to finish this. So with this build, though, it's weird because you want to finish these two items before you do the Mirror Mana. So Mirror Mana is actually going to be third item in this build. But the PTA is strong. It does a little bit of extra damage. It's really good for 1v1s, but then again, you have to imagine you're not getting a character buff. Fiora is not getting buffed by using PTA. It's only the person that you are singularly attacking that is taking more damage. So the PTA build is really good for splitting, more geared towards duels, 1v1s, 1v2s, not as much team fighting. And this is another thing that you're going to look at in Champ Select and be like, okay, well, this game I'm probably going to have to do a lot of splitting. Let's try PTA. I've seen this work against like Camille's, Renekton's, like those types of things where you can kind of get in, get out, get in, get out, get your like your two hits, trade, leave, do an extra 200, 300 damage from press the attack. Now, this is the PTA build I like, but let's just talk about a handful of builds really quick to end this video. All right. There is a few, and you do have some leniency here. So I'm going to just go through some tier builds. So let's say we don't want Stridebreaker. We can build Triforce, and that's fine with this build. With this build specifically, before we start talking about anything else. This build specifically, this is good as well. Now, this build actually works really well with Conqueror too. So you can run this with Conqueror. Now, let's get rid of Bork, because the Bork, once again, Bork is dead setting you into only playing split push. If you're taking Bork, you're probably only going to split push. So this is a good team fighting build here. If we're taking Mirror Mana, and Sterix, I do like this one as well. This is another good core build, another combination. So right now we're just going to run through a bunch of like core build combinations that are actually all right and talk about them. This is a good build for splitting and team fighting. This is more of, but it's very average, right? So you kind of just sit there and you're good with splitting. You can team fight a little bit, but you kind of sit just right there at like an average level. You're like, okay, well, I could be doing more if I would have built something else. But it's not the worst thing ever. I would probably give it like a B tier, right? So, you know what? Let's just do it like that. Let's just give them tier list. Okay, what about Stride Breaker and Ravenous? This is my S tier, right? This is my S tier. These three right here, my S tier. Love this. It's my favorite build. You can also do this and build Titanic. I would still give this an A tier. Stride Breaker, Mirror Mana, Sterix, I would give that an A tier. I think that's great as well. Stride Breaker, Mirror Mana, and Death's Dance. You can do that in the full AD as well. So here's the thing. I'm sure a lot of people are wondering why I haven't built Gore Drinker one time yet. Gore Drinker is not bad. Gore Drinker is not bad, but I feel like it does the same exact thing as Stride Breaker, just not as well. Wouldn't you want to slow him? I mean, imagine the 40% slow for 3 seconds. You can chase him down, and if you're getting your fast 4 off, this doesn't take more than a second. That's a second right there, and now we can knock a vital and then get a second vital while they're still slowed and they can't get away. We can knock out 6 vitals with 1 Stride Breaker proc. It's still good. It's just that I prefer doing more damage and being able to slow and being able to have fun with it, make flashy plays, win some 1v2s and all that type of stuff. But when you're building this, it's still good. It's just not what I prefer. But I'm not going to sit here and act like it's bad, because it's not. I want to talk about lanes where you have a laner that heals a lot, like Aatrox, Aurelia, all those types of lanes. Snag Executioners, that is once again, this is going to be, so let's talk about this for a second. You got 3 power backs. If you're running Grasp, you want your Sheen and Tyron back. That's an 1100 gold back. That's a power back. Now, if you're going for your normal Stride Breaker, Mirror Mana, then your 1500 gold is going to be your power back. That's where you get your whip and you get your tier. Now, if we're playing against a healing beast like Aatrox and Warwick and Aurelia, our power back is going to be 1200 because we want to buy Executioners and tier. That's going to be our 2 items. And that's going to be, those first backs are very important. If you're ever able to pull off a power back like that and get both those items, you should win the game. Like, actually, you should be able to win the game. And trying to play for that is kind of hard. And sometimes it's better just to take a cheater's back. That's not always going to happen. But if you're at like 1350 and you got a wave there, I honestly would recommend trying to stay to actually get it. Because if you can get that, TP back to lane, that's when it's worth it to TP back to lane because of how strong you're going to be. Because usually walking back to lane is going to be better than TPing. But if you're able to get a power back, TP back in the lane and dominate your laner for the rest of the game. Just dominate them. But I just wanted to throw in the Executioners thing as well. Because you can't avoid Executioners against healing laners because you will not win the 1v1s. And that's it. That's the video. Peace out, YouTube.